All right, good morning, everybody. Greg Nelson here from the Digital Media Institute. And we are going to be doing, sorry, I'm just checking something. We're going to be doing a really great breakdown of The Last of Us. Actually, Season 2 just came out, and I think you guys are going to really like it. If you haven't been a fan of The Last of Us, either as the game or in the HBO series, you should check it out. It's really there's some really amazing stuff in it, and so I'm going to take a look at this right now. The trailer for The Last of Us, and so what I've got is some of the visual effects that have been done. Now this is from DNAG. This is a breakdown. A lot of it is of last year. One of the things that I find so impressive about this show is the world building. And when they're building, post-apocalyptic Boston and all the different things that they're doing, it is a legitimately impressive venture, because you don't see this much on television, something to this level. Maybe, and HBO has really done it the best in terms of large scale visual effects. Game of Thrones certainly was a groundbreaking one as far as that goes. Same with Westworld, also just in terms of the amount of visual effects that they do. Last of Us really rises to the level of the game. Now, I just want to kind of go through some of these. So one of the things that we always talk about in my classes is just taking a look at all of the all of the different layers that are going on in here, and this one is no exception to that. This is, you have to really look at, on this level, like, what is added and what's not. Obviously, you might have a couple of real buildings in here, like maybe this one here and maybe this one here, but the rest of them have been blown out. They've been destroyed, and adding that and all of the other stuff that's going on is a lot. And if you look at just the weathered nature, even of the stop signs, to make it feel like, this is all stuff that's transpired over 30 years, and this is what a world looks like after. Now, this is actually one of my favorite shots. Okay, so, and this is when I talk about, digital world building and whatnot. This was obviously a drone shot that you've got looking straight down on the street. But in order to make it work, you have to go through 3D track everything, and then add all of these different things on top of the buildings and things like that. So just check out what they've done here. Like, all of it is literally replaced building tops, things like that. And then they did some work, right here to roto, or I don't see any blue screen down there, to roto out those guys on the rooftops. And certainly the addition of all of these different wires and things like that, it certainly looks like something that you would see in the the third world, where basically everybody's just stealing power and everything from everywhere. And all of those additions really help to make this thing much more part of it. A lot of digital characters, obviously. Specifically, okay, so the camera pushes forward on this shot here, and it's a huge blue wall. Now, just if you don't know, one of the things, a lot of this stuff is shot on location, right? So they're out in. You're not going to just build a set for this and shoot it all on a sound stage. So, it's also not like you're going to be shipping out super expensive LED walls to try and pull this stuff off. That's usually volume work that's done on a stage. So this does require a blue screen. It does require these orange tape marks or tracking marks to make sure that that Nuke or After Effects, whatever you're using to do your compositing in, is able to get a good track on the way the camera's moving. So I mean, this is a great look at all of what they put in here. I mean, just the buildings, and even getting in here and adding a lot of the brush and stuff like that, and a lot of the vines and shrubbery and things like that to really make it feel broken down. It's a huge amount of work. Those buildings, the destruction of that takes some time. It's a lot easier to just extrude a building and add some glass windows and whatnot, but to break something up convincingly to make it feel like it toppled over into another building, and that the entire superstructure of the building is bent a little bit, that takes a lot of effort. And if I had to say anything, and I don't particularly like to criticize other people's work unless it's particularly bad. If any of the shots that I saw in last season of The Last of Us looked a little bit comped, it would be these. But that's not a, I mean, that's not a bad thing at all. This is just, there's a lot of work going on. Now the before and after on this one is pretty specifically, it's pretty cool. So. There's the before. So there's just standing in a downtown. I'm not exactly sure what city they shot this in. I mean, it's supposed to be Boston, but that doesn't mean it was. But then to add all of the destruction. Saving Private Ryan. Those were actually destroyed buildings that were made to look like that. This is all done, obviously, in a computer, and so, I mean, all of the additions that are done on this bridge, all of the blown out cars. I mean, some of them look. If you stop too hard and look at things, okay, maybe that something needs a little bit more detail, but that's not the purpose of this. This is building an entirely blown out city. And you're watching this as a demo reel. This is a great way to take a look at it, just to see essentially how how all these different layers work, and it's a way of showing off your work. It's impressive. Now I will say I'm gonna just go back and just comfort the compositors on this shot, okay, and the 3D artists on this shot. So they did a ridiculous amount of work, okay, and added all of this right here. You can see it's all just amazing amounts of detail, and then we go to that, and where we've just we put a blur filter over it, just to knock it back. And yes, it looks more realistic, but it's always as a compositor, it's always rough to put all of this work in, or a 3D artist to put all this work in, and then, okay, we're going to just blur it out, or we're going to reframe something. And so a lot of work for I always think that one of the most difficult things that's done, particularly in a season 1 of something, is deciding how much effort and how much work is going to go into building something, and they certainly established it with this one. Now, season 2 gets a little bit different in that at least we start in Wyoming, and so.
Hi, I'm Craig Mazin. I'm the showrunner, executive producer, writer, sometimes director of HBO's The Last of Us. And our show obviously has a lot of visual effects, but some of the most important visual effects are environments. DNEG, a company I worked with on Chernobyl, did most of the environments, not all.
And if you've seen Chernobyl, by the way, if you have not seen it, I highly recommend it. Really, really well done. As far as, again, world building.
In The Last of Us. And one thing that we asked them to do was to create environments that were as realistic as possible, even if we were creating situations that were fictional, like a bombed out Boston. And one thing they do so well is striving to create verisimilitude. They do it beautifully. DNEG, as far as I'm concerned, is the best in the business when it comes to environments. It was a joy working with them. They helped make our show incredible.
What happened to this place? What happened since then? How did nature overtake it? The most important thing that we always tried to keep was making sure that our environments that we were building set the tone and the feeling for the show.
Because I want to point something out. This is, and this shot was not in the previous one that we were just looking at, but this is still DNEG. As he said, this is probably one of the more complex shots. Just to do a walking over the shoulder shot that it's tracking with all of this 3D stuff, to get it all to line up correctly is really tough.
Making sure that our environments that we were building set the tone.
And to get, to make the camera shape work like that is
for what the characters were going through.
Really challenging.
DNEG was the lead vendor on HBO's The Last of Us. When we first set out, we found that there's just so much endless variety and complexity to nature. We just lived and breathed in this world of The Last of Us for a good year.
There was a weight of expectation going into this project. I think everybody knew how important the games were to people. We didn't take that lightly at all. All of our decision making really came back to how did this work in the game? What can we do to elaborate on and build on what already existed while staying true to and respecting that source material? We had huge amounts of CG across many, many episodes. All of it had to contribute to the progression of the narrative.
It's a story about survival and loss of civilization. When VFX are used in a way that enhance the story, I think environment in that sense are very much a character.
We had a lot of crew on the show who are also huge fans of the game, and I think that shows. My favorite thing about our work on The Last of Us is the destruction work we did on downtown Boston. It's a memorable sequence in the first game, and it was exciting to bring that to life for the show.
A great deal of thought went into how nature would take back these worlds. So we used custom tool sets for natural growth onto the environments. Ivy and overgrowth needs to feel like it can actually exist in this world. It was really important that while this detail was everywhere, that it wasn't too distracting.
We built CG digidoubles for Joel, Tess, and Ellie. Those were used mainly for the sequence in which they escape the quarantine zone and head out into Boston at night. We had to approach a lot of these shots in a sense that we were sort of cinematographers.
One of the trickiest shots we did was the two leaning buildings. We did an early post-viz version of the shot for the client to help establish the camera takeover, lighting, and basic shot design. It's a nighttime shot with no key sources of light apart from the lightning. It's also raining heavily, and it's the first time you see Boston outside of the quarantine zone.
We had to find a balance between trying to get the vibe of the game, which was much more lush and vibrant, and try to combine that with this new aesthetic for the show that introduced a more autumn twist.
They travel over a year in this show, so throughout the episodes you'll see a transformation of the environments from fall all the way through to spring. One of our most challenging sequences was what we called the hair salon. This was shot on location without the use of blue screens. And there was always an intention to use the buildings that were in that environment as a foundation for where we would place our CG buildings and where we would destroy things.
Well, that is interesting. Now, that I did not know, that this was not a blue screen shot. So that makes it even more impressive, because if you're doing roto for that, that is explains a couple
For the
things.
State House
actually.
sequence, we added procedural Ivy and Houdini, as we captured drone photogrammetry of the legislature building in Edmonton, Alberta. We used this data to build a full CG asset, changing the dome to match the iconic gold dome of Massachusetts State House. And for the final shots in the sequence, our effects team blew it all up.
There are a few moments in the show that are pretty much one-to-one recreations of the game. The one that comes to mind is what we call the balustrade deck, or the ladder crossing sequence, where the characters exit out the museum after beating the clickers, and they go out onto the rooftop into the open air. What I love about this sequence is that even though there are 6 stories up in an incredibly dangerous situation, there's still this sense of relief compared to what they just went through. So you have the open air, the blue sky, and then they travel across the ladder and look out onto the State House, and that's where it is kind of a one-to-one recreation of the game. It was perfect in the game, so it adapted perfectly.
The brief, either technically or creatively, really pushed us all out of our comfort zone and in very uncharted territories.
The Last of Us as a game is an incredibly immersive experience for the player. I hope the viewers of the show will have the same experience.
You can have a huge range from something very scary and claustrophobic to moments of relief and beauty.
Visual effects can be used as a storytelling aid.
This show has a way of reminding us to cherish what we have and to think about what's truly important in life.
So that's The Last of Us, at least from DNEG. I have another one that I put in here. Hold on. One second. Give me one second. I will pull up.
A burning building was the main light source during the big battle sequence.
One of the shows, or one of the vendors for this, is Weta. Also, Weta, you will know, is the home of Lord of the Rings, essentially. And one of the things they're extraordinarily good at is creature effects. That is really their bread and butter in so many ways. And so, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, A Better Man, even Wicked. They were nominated for all of those this year for Academy Award. That is really one of the things they do extremely well. So, The Last of Us is not going to be The Last of Us without the undead, right? And whether you like zombie shows or not, they've done this extremely well. Now, one of the things that I like about this as a thing is that it's not just digital characters. So much of this is done with actual physical props. And I've always felt, as a CG person myself, that anything that you can shoot live and then you can augment with CG always looks better, rather than it being just fully CG. So this is worth a look.
A burning building was the main light source during the big battle sequence, where hordes of infected poured out of a giant sinkhole. One of the biggest compositing challenges was layering the additional CG infected in between the live-action actors, while also adding dozens of muzzle flashes and impact elements like blood and dust. Smaller fires were integrated on the ground and in the burning house. The scene was also dressed with burning debris, smoke, and interactive footfalls and dust that appeared on vehicles along the suburban street. The fire lighting was driven by effects simulations to enhance the practical fires captured in camera. Additional lights were placed on all CG characters and used in compositing for interactive lighting, which was driven by the rebels' muzzle flashes. The flashes and their lingering smoke trails were timed and placed to add to the overall frenzy of the scene. They also helped direct the viewer's attention to the most significant beats in the sequence. When the bloater emerges from the sinkhole, the first step was matching the CG creature to the onset lighting. From there, the extra detail our high-quality bloater model afforded us was shaped with additional beauty lighting on a shot-per-shot basis. With a roaring fire behind him, we kept to a very silhouetted lighting scheme, adding to his dramatic, menacing appearance. The child clicker was also introduced in silhouette, but with just enough light sculpted on her face to ensure the audience would recognize her as a young girl. This introduced a terrifying new facet to the infected and a new dimension to the series. Apart from a small sliver of plate in the very foreground, the final shot of the sequence was entirely...
That is so ridiculously impressive, I have to say. Just to see all of the CG elements that are in here.
The final shot of the sequence was entirely CG. The lighting was naturally vignetted, and car headlights were used to rim light the infected crowd at various depths throughout the shot, drawing viewers through the scene. By strategically placing small fires in the distance, pockets of light were created for the infected to run through on their way to terrorize Kansas City.
It's really impressive, just what they've done. Now, the one thing that I want to show you, this is a much longer one, and I'm not going to show the entire thing. But one of the software packages that gets a lot of work in this one is Houdini, and you're not going to be able to do the fire and explosions without it. And now, if you want to watch this one in its entirety, we have the playlist posted. It'll be part of the description. It's called The Last of Us, and but this is just what you get out of Houdini, and they just go through. Sorry, I'm just start over here.
Welcome to
So this is kind of a webcast of it. So I'm not going to go through it specifically, but if you want to watch this on our playlist, you can certainly do that. But it's about 50 minutes long, so it's a really nice behind the scenes thing. So anyway, that is The Last of Us. A little bit of a recap of last season. I think if you're watching this season, you're going to find the effects are equally on par, particularly episode 2, which I watched last night. And they completely take it to an entirely new level when it comes to the undead, and when it comes to some storylines that are purely shocking, honestly. And if you're a fan of the game, then you know exactly where all this is headed. But it's extremely really well done. So that's it. That's my breakdown of The Last of Us, and I hope you enjoyed it. And we will talk next week.